Okay, welcome back. So, if you haven't watched part one, well, you've missed quite a lot of stuff. But very briefly, I asked Chat GPT if it could make my time trial bike faster. Here's what it suggested, and here's what I have attempted to do. May the video continue. Of course, chapter's always below. Let's get back into it. Spoke fairings for the front wheel. Your deep front wheel still has spokes. Try ultra thin spoke sleeves or clear spoke fairings. Basically wants me to make the spokes a teardrop shape. These are steel spokes here, so they are already incredibly thin. I guess one thing parkours could do would be like hidden spoke nipples, but the numbers again are extremely small. When it means clear spoke fairings, I don't know, I guess it just wants to make it, instead of a flat shape, more of a teardrop shape. I think it's reaching this one again. I'm gonna leave that one. An aero valve cover. Now, in all fairness, this is actually a fair amount of valves sticking out here because because it's an 83mm deep rim, you have to buy a 100mm valve. So you've got an extra 2 centimeters poking out there, plus the valve core, and I've got the click valve on here. And I've seen stuff for this before, which is the Silka Aero Shield. And looking here, you can see that, well, practically it's like just like a little shield, aero shield cap that goes over the wheel, the valve, sorry. And yeah, I guess just makes it a smidge more aero. On a Google, DT Swiss kind of do this like weird stem valve cap. I don't think that's gonna make anything more aerodynamic. But then finally, we get to Watch Shop here, which is Dan Bigham's website. And they have this like, wow, quite literally a fairing that goes over your valve. This thing's quite cool and rather insane, and they've got aero claims, and the aero claims are, well, small as you would expect, and they estimate at 45 k's an hour there is roughly a 0.7 watt saving gain here. Now, nearly 1 watt is kind of nothing, but it's better than nothing, and for only £15 here, I'm gonna add it to the basket. Righto, so to cover the valve here, from Watch Shop, this shield here has arrived, and it looks pretty cool. It's fairly sleek, I must say. So it does slide onto there quite comfortably. Easy with 2 hands, of course. And it does bolt itself on via the back there, quite simple. Now, it will eat into your coating a little bit, so that might be a little bit harder to get this thread off eventually just because of that. But there is a major flaw with this. And that major flaw is that it weighs 12 grams. It's super heavy. So I have balanced these wheels because on GCN, they went to the Silverstone testing center, did some testing, and it's about 4 watts per wheel when they are balanced. What this does, if I get this spinning up, even at this kind of like relatively slow speed here, if I try and show the back of the bike, it's probably quite hard to see, but it is bouncing up and down a bit. And effectively, the 0.75 of a watt gain that you're getting from that is being negated by losing likely about 4 watts at 45 kilometers an hour by debalancing the wheels. So that kind of makes this upgrade fairly useless. Online, there were some other versions that I could download for free and 3D print. So there was this one, which is lighter. This is about 6 grams, but it doesn't quite fit on all the way. And then there was even a further version. Again, this one's about 3 grams, which is like, you can just see that it's got a bit of a sharper nose there kind of thing. Again, doesn't go on all the way, and to be honest, I'm not sure how it would stay on there. Obviously, centrifugal forces when you're moving would keep it on there, but when you're not moving, it could fall off very easily. Finally, number 10 on Chat GPT's list, a shoe crank air bridge. There's a small gap between the shoe and the crank arm which creates drag. I had a Google of this. I literally couldn't find anything, so I think this is one of those ones I can just ignore. If you guys know, once again, help me out in the comments. I think there's a couple of things that are in my mind that I think ChatGPT has missed here on my bike specifically. I'll run over those real quick. First of all, on the oversized pulley wheel here, there are Aero oversized pulley wheel systems that are meant to save about a watt a gain. You've got some, well, really expensive ones from Ceramic Speed, some slightly cheaper ones, I believe, from Cycling Ceramic and Nova Ride. They do some slightly cheaper ones. So that could be an option. I don't really fancy spending that much money on such a small gain. After designing stuff, I noticed the massive hole in my oversized pulley wheel here. This is from Tri-Peak, quite a cool piece. You can obviously get loads of different colors and stuff like that. But yeah, I printed out this small like plastic puck to go in here. Now, one thing I did have to do, I did have to make a second version where I had to make one side concave. It may be too hard to get in there and see, but you can see that the actual derailleur cage here basically pushes inwards into the whole section here. And that fixed that solution straight away. Now, the air is going to be super messy by the time it gets to this point. Is it going to make any difference? I imagine not. It says here, show me more, so yeah, show me more. So a lot of these are kind of the same on these extra ones. It says an aero nose cone. You can go like big aero fairings on the front. I don't want that. That's a little bit too far for me. These are, well, fairly standard, just round poles or nearly round poles. You can literally get fairings that cover your forearm that are meant to be a little bit quicker. Aero Coach do some, Watch Shop again do some. I don't want to spend that much money again. So did a little search online looking for this kind of stuff, and I saw this really cool thing that someone else had made here on Reddit, which is kind of like the Aero tray, where it just makes a tray underneath here. Before I show you what I've done for the 3D printed cockpit here, guys, there's one person I need to point you towards that has done it far better than me. I only found him after I finished my one. A guy called Nils Huchlang, German guy, or I think he's German. And sorry if I didn't pronounce your name right, man. But I've got a link to the video on his Instagram down below where he's made his personal 3D printed front end cockpit, and it is awesome. He goes over how he's made it structurally strong enough and stuff like that, so you can find that all below. Check him out. It was just really cool and far better than anything I've ever done. Right, let's talk about how I got to this final piece for the front because, well, I had quite a few failures on this one. This was definitely my biggest challenge. Kicking it off, I had this behemoth. You can see I was going to tie it on there with these small like loopholes. I was just going to get some cable ties. And effectively, this was just ginormous. Oh my God. It was way too big, and it is 100% a fairing on the front there. This would never pass the rules. So back to the Fusion booth it was, printing out the next one. I then printed off a smaller version, and that lives right here. So it's like a spoon for the front, kind of same design, cut out the bottom. Again, I was looking at this, even though it fit a lot better, it was smaller, it was smoother, the pads were higher for my elbows, so it should have been more aerodynamic. It was still absolutely massive, and it is definitely a front fairing. At this point, I was kind of getting frustrated. My Fusion 360, my CAD skills, they're not very good. So I gave it some time, went back to the drawing board after a week, and then I thought, what if I cover the individual arms with stuff like this? Then that's going to be faster. So yeah, I came up with some initial ideas, printed them out. These fit really nicely on the bars, but when I tried to fit another one on the other side here, like this guy, I realized that effectively on top they just overlapped. So this generated further ideas. Back to the CAD software it is. I thought, why not make my Garmin mount and my water holder this one piece? So as you can see here, I've got the mount for the Garmin here, and I put a little magnet on top and combined them together. So previously I have some magnets in here, because on the old mount I had a magnet stuck underneath and it used to sit on the bottom, but now it can quite happily just stick itself on there, and it sits quite nicely. I mean, it's not perfect, but it doesn't move around as much. Leg flow guides, like small fins or filling in behind the leg. This has been done on like CTT, and they kind of banned it on UK time trials and stuff like that, and I kind of agree. It's a bit too fairing-like. This one seems interesting, a sandpaper strip on the helmet. Tell me more. Okay, I think what it's referring to here is when you're in the time trial position, you have a boundary layer that flows over the helmet here. And it kind of wants you to put a trip strip roughly in this position so the air doesn't separate off the helmet, it gets turbulent and basically sticks it back onto the tail here. To be honest, I think my personal position is pretty good as it is, so I might leave this one. And again, you probably need a wind tunnel to test it properly. So as you do with all of these things. There is some interesting bits coming up here, guys. I actually swim and race with one of the aerodynamic engineers at McLaren F1, and he's given me some little help here. So a few interesting points coming up. Right, so here's where things start to get a little bit out there. From these ideas on Chat GPT, I effectively ended up with more ideas in my own mind to add on top of this. One of them was vortex generator. If you don't know what a vortex generator is, here's the very basic and short version of it. Effectively, they kind of trip air to create a vortex as it flies over the top of an edge, so it literally spins in vortexes, and that effectively keeps more air stuck to or behind a body, reducing the weight behind it. Now, these of course do create drags themselves, but a lot of the time, when you're going fast enough, the overall resulting output reduces drag because you're reducing that negative pressure area behind the body of whatever's moving. Once you know about these, you kind of start to see them everywhere. They're on lorries, they're just on basic cars and stuff like that. When I spoke to that McLaren aerodynamic engineer, he kind of said, on the bicycle, your speeds probably aren't high enough, unfortunately, because my idea was to attach them to my triathlon belt, which should effectively trip the air around into my bum area. But yeah, he said likely chances is too far back in your body, and because the speeds aren't high enough, you're probably going to be adding more drag than taking it away. But what I am going to do to you right here is talk about more ideas effectively that he had that could be done. Because he hasn't only just worked on Formula One, they have actually done some stuff for some cycling teams, and you're probably going to recognize some of them. Kicking it off with Sky. They changed the rules on skin suits forever because effectively what they did is they added dimples and stuff to certain areas. He said particularly the legs, they are big slab round cylinders in the wind. Yeah, your legs just are not very aerodynamic at all. So if you could add like trip flows and stuff onto there, then very good. After they were adding like these like massive bumps onto the skin suits, effectively they made a rule that said the skin suit could be like one material and you couldn't have the trip flows above a certain depth or raised a certain amount. I can't remember what the number is. I think it's around like 1 to 2 millimeters, somewhere around there. Thankfully, my tri-suit already has this kind of trip flow texture on the legs and the arms, so this isn't something that I thought to include. If you do have a smooth leg, I was wondering if you could make like some sort of like, you know how you get that aero bras in cycling that create the trip flows around the arms? You could probably do something similar with the legs. Another thing that this guy helped introduce was on the time trial helmets. You can see that they have this massive like visor fins. Now these look pretty wild and wacky, but basically they effectively throw air over the legs or around the legs, making the legs actually a more aerodynamic area. This is how he explained it to me. So that's why they introduced them. Obviously, they've reduced the size of them to make them not so obvious, and I think to fit in with certain helmet rules. In the triathlon rules, you are not allowed to add anything to your helmet, so I feel like if you did this, it would have to be part of the stock helmet. I did think about 3D printing something for it, but yeah, I think it would probably get picked up on and probably get banned for. Another funny thing that he did suggest is if you had a long beard, you could effectively like super glue it so it created this point from your chin going downwards, and that fills in the gap from your chin there. That's actually quite a big gain apparently. You obviously have to have a longer beard. Mine, I like to keep mine a bit shorter here, but if you have a long beard, you can make yourself more aerodynamic just by gelling your beard into this nice point here so it attaches the air from your chin to your chest quite nicely. Okay, you're probably questioning how much this bike now weighs. Originally, it weighed 10.4 kilos. That is with all of the spares. So there's about 450 grams worth of spares in the little cow udder here. But now it weighs 10.8 kilos. So it's added on about 350, 400 grams for all of these mods. Okay guys, out of this whole bike and out of 3D printing all of those upgrades and stuff like that, I would say I've had 5, maybe 6 successes. That easy gains is definitely a win. I think filling in the gap between the bottle here is easily a win. Filling in the hole in the oversized pulley wheel there, maybe a win. Getting a more solid, filled in, smoother front disc there for the brake. This one for me is definitely a win. I think this one is pretty sleek, looks really good. Got these like Ankyla Aero bottles, and if you need, these do fit a regular bottle as well. So if you want to throw this out and get more water along on the course, that is definitely an option. And then finally, of course, there is my my Garmin mount, which is right here, and well, actually is my Garmin mount because I need a way to have this on the bike somehow. I would like to hear what you guys think about a lot of those things basically. Do you think some of this will get banned in an Ironman? Let me know if you think these things would be picked up. I think they're just about, because they're multifunctional, they do serve other purposes, they're probably going to be okay. And these kind of things are more of a bending the rules than breaking the rules. I have put some stickers on there to make them look more legit and integrated, so I think it's worked fairly well. Speaking of bending the rules though, I would like to talk about them a moment more because I know what some of you are saying in the comments already. You're talking about recumbent faired bikes. Now I want to keep this section brief because I'm actually more of a fan of the UCI rules than the triathlon rules. I'm doing this because, well, I guess I can, but ideally I would like to see the rules align more with the UCI where you just don't have these kind of like fairings on the bike, especially those front ones for a lot of those triathletes that I'm flicking up on screen now. Those are ridiculous, man. They are a fairing, all right? And they do make the bikes look fairly wacky. But obviously all of this basically tends to lead, oh, what's faster once you add more fairings? Because you have to have these rules to stop fairings, otherwise you end up with these recumbent bikes where you're lying on your back that are fully faired. They are unbelievably aerodynamically fast, but I think they take away from what triathlon and time trialing are about. I do think we want to maintain the aesthetic of our sport, so I'm a personal agreeer of having these rules in place so we don't end up at that position. Finally, if you are a recumbent rider with those big fairings on, I'm not saying that what you do is not cool. Doing that, trying to achieve those speeds, those high average speeds that you can do, I just think it's a different kind of sport, that's all. So with Chat GPT making my bike faster, it's a maybe. I'm gonna have to do some testing. Like I said, I think I have some small successes in there. Many things that couldn't be done. A lot of the ideas were, well, way too wacky. But yeah, we'll see if I can go any faster at Ironman or Kudia next week. Well, I guess when this is uploaded, it would have been yesterday. So guys, what do you think? Obviously this has ended up being more of a triathlon orientated thing because, well, that's a place where you can kind of bend the rules. And speaking of the rules, they're open to discretion of the enforcer on the day, which is kind of annoying. I think they need to be a little bit more clear cut rather than just someone's opinion. This is especially what the F1 engineer said as well. He did not like the triathlon rules, but I have done my best to try and stick within them. Even like the Challenge Roth rules, I've tried to keep that bottle fairing inside the challenge rules as well, that rear box that has added there. But if you have any questions, let me know below. If you have any further questions or ideas, stick them in the comments down below. I reply to most things. Or if you want to follow what happened on the day, and you can follow my daily shenanigans on Instagram over here, and you can message me privately there too. I answer to most things. But other than that, I've been Jason. This has been Cycling Unboxed. I'll see you guys in another video.